Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Wedding Day Silence. Derek Thornfield adjusted his tie one final time as he stood at the altar of St. Matthew's Cathedral. At 34, he was a man who commanded respect. 6'2", with steel-gray eyes that had seen the ugliness of war during his military service and later the cutthroat world of private security consulting. His company, Apex Protection Services, had made him wealthy by keeping dangerous secrets for dangerous people. The organ began playing, and Chloe appeared at the end of the aisle. 28 years old, with auburn hair and emerald eyes, she looked ethereal in her flowing white gown. They had met 2 years ago at a charity gala, where she worked as an event coordinator. Her laugh had captivated him, her seeming innocence a balm to his hardened soul. But today something was wrong. Chloe walked down the aisle mechanically, her face pale and expressionless. When she reached him, Derek searched her eyes for the warmth he'd fallen in love with. Instead, he found something cold and distant. The ceremony proceeded with painful stiffness. Chloe's responses to the officiant were barely audible whispers. When it came time for their personal vows, she simply nodded when asked if she took Derek to be her husband. No smile, no tears of joy, nothing. Derek felt the eyes of 200 guests burning into them. His military buddies, her family from Portland, their mutual friends, all witnessing this bizarre pantomime. His mother, Margaret Thornfield, sat in the front row with worry etched across her weathered face. "What's wrong? Why won't you talk?" Derek whispered urgently during the ring exchange, but Chloe just stared ahead in silence, her hands trembling as she slipped the band onto his finger. The reception at the grand ballroom was a surreal nightmare. Chloe sat beside him at the head table like a beautiful mannequin, mechanically cutting their wedding cake, forcing smiles for photos, but never speaking. When guests approached to congratulate them, Derek found himself making excuses. "She's just overwhelmed. Wedding nerves. She's feeling a bit under the weather." Brett Morrison, Derek's former Army buddy and current business partner, leaned over during dinner. "Brother, what the hell is going on with your wife? She looks like she's at a funeral, not her wedding." Derek's jaw tightened. Brett was right. Something was seriously wrong, but he had no answers. Around 9 o'clock, Chloe excused herself to the restroom. As Derek watched her go, a young waitress with short blonde hair approached his table. She looked nervous, glancing around before slipping him a small folded piece of paper. "Sir, someone asked me to give this to you," she said quickly before hurrying away. Derek unfolded the note with growing dread. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words hit him like a sledgehammer. "Your wife has been lying to you for 8 months. She's been having an affair with your business partner, Brett Morrison. They planned this wedding as the perfect cover. She's pregnant with his child, not yours. She wanted to back out today, but Brett threatened to tell you everything and destroy her reputation if she didn't go through with it. She's trapped, and now so are you. Check her phone. Password is your anniversary date from when you first met." I couldn't stand watching this anymore. "A friend." Derek's vision blurred. His hands began to shake as the words sank in. The noise of the reception faded to a dull roar in his ears. He looked across the room at Brett, who was laughing loudly with some of Derek's army buddies, a beer in his hand, playing the role of the loyal best man. 8 months. They had been engaged for exactly 8 months. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. Chloe's recent distance, her mysterious doctor appointments she claimed were for wedding stress, Brett's increased interest in their business finances, the way they both seemed to avoid being in the same room together lately. It wasn't avoidance, it was guilty conscience. Derek stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Several guests looked his way, but he was already moving toward the exit, the note crumpled in his fist. His mind, trained by years of military strategy and security planning, was already shifting into tactical mode. Derek Thornfield had built his reputation on never leaving an enemy standing. Tonight, he had discovered he'd been sharing his bed with 2 of them. Chapter 2. The Discovery. Derek drove through the empty streets of downtown Portland, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He pulled into the parking garage of his high-rise apartment building, the one he'd planned to sell after the honeymoon, since he and Chloe were supposed to move into their new house in the suburbs. In his study, Derek opened his laptop and began doing what he did best, gathering intelligence. His military background and current profession had taught him that information was the deadliest weapon of all. First, he accessed the security footage from his office building. As the owner of Apex Protection Services, Derek had state-of-the-art surveillance systems. He scrolled through weeks of footage, his stomach churning as he watched Brett and Chloe's secret meetings in Derek's own conference room. There they were, embracing passionately, her hand on her still flat stomach, Brett's mouth against her neck. The timestamp showed their affair had started exactly 8 months ago, right after Derek had proposed to Chloe at their favorite restaurant. Derek's phone buzzed with texts from concerned wedding guests, but he ignored them all. He had work to do. Next, he hacked into Chloe's phone remotely, a skill he'd learned from his cybersecurity contacts. The password worked exactly as the note predicted. What he found made his blood run cold. Text after text between Chloe and Brett. Brett, just get through the ceremony. We'll figure out the rest later. Chloe, I can't do this to him. Derek loves me. Brett, you should have thought about that before you spread your legs for me. You're having him why, baby? If you don't marry him, I'll tell him everything and make sure everyone knows what a whore you are. Your precious reputation will be destroyed. Chloe, I hate you for this. Brett, you didn't hate me last night when you were screaming my name. Derek's hands clenched into fists. But it got worse. He found messages between Brett and someone named Tony Vega, a name Derek recognized from his criminal background checks. Tony was a loan shark who Brett apparently owed serious money to. Gambling debts, from the looks of it. Tony, you better have my money by the end of the month. Morrison, or you're going to be eating through a straw. Brett, don't worry. I'm about to become business partners with my buddy Derek. His company is worth millions. I'll have your money plus interest. Tony, how are you going to manage that? Brett, let's just say I've got some leverage over him. He's marrying my baby mama tomorrow, but he doesn't know it. Once I control half his business through his wife, you'll get paid. Derek leaned back in his chair, a cold smile spreading across his face. So that was the real game. Brett hadn't just stolen his woman. He'd planned to steal his life's work too. Chloe was just a pawn in Brett's scheme to take over Derek's company and pay off his debts. Derek pulled up Brett's file from his secure server. As his business partner, Derek had done extensive background checks on him. Brett Morrison, 32, from Seattle. Former Army Ranger, discharged for conduct issues Derek had never fully investigated. Divorced, with a string of failed relationships and mounting debt problems Derek hadn't known about. But Derek also had something Brett didn't know about, leverage that went far beyond business partnerships. 2 years ago, Derek had been hired by a government contractor to provide security for a classified operation in Afghanistan. Brett had been part of the team, and Derek had covered up a serious incident where Brett had violated the rules of engagement, resulting in civilian casualties. Derek had destroyed the evidence and official reports to protect Brett's career and their unit's reputation. Brett thought that secret died in the desert. He was wrong. Derek made a series of phone calls to his contacts, people in dark corners of the intelligence world who owed him favors. By morning, he would have everything he needed to destroy both Brett and Chloe completely. His phone rang. Chloe's name appeared on the screen. Derek. Her voice was small, scared. Where did you go? Everyone's asking. I know, Derek said quietly. Silence stretched between them. Derek, I can explain. Can you explain whose baby you're carrying? He heard her sharp intake of breath, then the sound of her crying. I'm coming home, she whispered. No, Derek said, his voice like ice. You're not. This isn't your home anymore. It never was. He hung up and removed the battery from his phone. Derek Thornfield was done being the victim. Tomorrow, the war would begin. Chapter 3, The Setup. Derek spent the night in his study, making preparations with the methodical precision of a military operation. By dawn, he had assembled a comprehensive dossier on both targets and formulated a strategy that would destroy them systematically. His first call was to his lawyer, Patricia Hawkins, who specialized in high-stakes corporate litigation. Derek, congratulations on the wedding. Patricia, I need an emergency annulment. Tonight's wedding was obtained through fraud. I have evidence my wife has been having an affair and is pregnant with another man's child. Patricia was quiet for a moment. That's certainly grounds for annulment in Oregon. I can have the papers filed by Monday. Good, but that's just the beginning. I need you to prepare a hostile takeover of my own company. I'm sorry, what? Derek explained the partnership structure of Apex Protection Services. While Derek owned 60%, Brett held 40% as a founding partner. However, Derek had discovered that Brett had been using his shares as collateral for his gambling debts without Derek's knowledge, a violation of their partnership agreement. If Brett has pledged his shares illegally, I can void his partnership and buy back his stake for pennies on the dollar, Patricia confirmed. But Derek, are you sure you want to? I want him financially ruined, Derek interrupted. Completely destroyed. Can you do it? Yes, but then do it. I'll transfer the evidence to your secure server within the hour. Derek's second call was to Marcus Webb, a former CIA operative who now ran a private investigation firm. Marcus had been Derek's commanding officer in Afghanistan and knew about Brett's covered-up incident. Derek, my boy, how was the wedding? Marcus, I need a favor. Remember that situation with Brett Morrison in Kandahar? The line went quiet. What about it? I need the real files. All of them. Derek, that's dangerous territory. If that comes to light, Brett Morrison is trying to destroy my life. He's been having an affair with my wife and planned to steal my company. The civilian casualties in Kandahar weren't collateral damage. They were murder. I covered for him, and now he's repaying that loyalty by betraying me. Marcus sighed. I'll have the files to you by tonight. But Derek, once this door opens, there's no closing it. Good. I want it wide open. Derek's third call was to someone who didn't officially exist. Gabriel Stone was a problem solver for people with serious money and serious problems. Derek had met him through his government security work, and Gabriel had a talent for making inconvenient situations disappear or making inconvenient people disappear. Mr. Thornfield, Gabriel's cultured voice came through an encrypted line. I heard congratulations are in order. Actually, I need your services. 2 targets. I want them broken, not dead. At least not yet. Financial, personal, physical, all of the above. I want them to lose everything that matters to them, slowly and painfully. And I want them to know it's coming from me. Interesting. Send me the details. My rate is, money isn't an object. I want creativity. I want them to suffer the way they made me suffer. Understood. I'll be in touch. By noon, Derek had received confirmation that his trap was set. Patricia was filing the annulment papers and the corporate takeover documents. Marcus had delivered Brett's classified military files. Gabriel had provided a detailed psychological profile of both targets and recommended a course of action that would systematically destroy every aspect of their lives. Derek's phone had 17 missed calls from Chloe and 12 from Brett. He ignored them all. Instead, he drove to his office building. In the lobby, he instructed security to revoke Brett Morrison's access cards immediately. Then he took the elevator to the 15th floor, where Apex Protection Services occupied the entire level. Derek's assistant, Jennifer Ross, looked up in surprise. Mr. Thornfield, I didn't expect to see you today. How was the wedding? Canceled, Derek said simply. Jennifer, I need you to call an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. All department heads, plus our major clients. And I need you to contact our military contract officer at the Pentagon. Tell him I have urgent information regarding a compromised operative. Jennifer's eyes widened, but she'd worked for Derek long enough to know not to ask questions. Derek walked into his corner office and stood at the window, looking down at the city below. Somewhere out there, Brett Morrison was probably celebrating his successful deception. Somewhere else, Chloe was probably crying and trying to figure out how to salvage her situation. They had no idea what was coming. Derek opened his desk drawer and pulled out a framed photo of him and Chloe from their engagement party. She was laughing in the picture, her head thrown back in joy, her hand displaying her engagement ring. He studied her face, looking for signs of the deception he'd missed. Then he dropped the frame into his wastebasket, glass shattering as it hit the bottom. Derek Thornfield was a patient man, but his patience had limits. Brett Morrison and Chloe Reynolds had crossed a line from which there would be no return. They wanted to play games with his life. He'd show them what real games looked like. The war was about to begin, and Derek had no intention of taking prisoners. Chapter 4. The First Strike. Monday morning arrived with gray Portland skies that matched Derek's mood perfectly. He sat in the conference room of Hawkins & Associates, watching Patricia spread documents across the mahogany table like battle plans. "The annulment papers have been filed," Patricia said, adjusting her glasses. "Based on the evidence you provided, the affair, the pregnancy, the fraudulent concealment, the judge will likely grant it within 30 days. Oregon is very clear about marriages obtained through deception." Derek nodded grimly. "What about the business? Brett Morrison violated Section 12 of your partnership agreement by using his shares as collateral without written consent. Under Oregon business law, that constitutes automatic forfeiture of his partnership stake. I filed an emergency motion to freeze his assets and force a sale of his shares back to the company at the original valuation price from 5 years ago, which is approximately $40,000. His current stake is worth about $2.8 million. Derek's smile was predatory. "Perfect. When will he be served?" "This afternoon." "But Derek, you should know. He's been calling my office all morning. He knows something is happening." Derek's phone buzzed with another call from Brett. He'd received 23 calls in the past 2 days, along with increasingly desperate voicemails. He declined the call and turned back to Patricia. "Let him panic. What about the criminal matter?" Patricia's expression grew serious. "That's more complicated. Marcus delivered the Afghanistan files, and they're damning. Brett Morrison violated the Geneva Convention and committed war crimes. However, pursuing this criminally could expose your own role in the cover-up. I'm prepared for that risk. Derek, you could face federal charges. Court-martial. Prison time." Derek leaned back in his chair, considering. What if the information were to surface through different channels? Anonymous tips to investigative journalists, for instance. Patricia understood immediately. "That would be outside the scope of legal counsel I can provide." "Of course." Moving on. "What about the personal matter?" "Chloe Reynolds has been staying at the Marriott downtown since Saturday night. My investigator confirmed she's been meeting with Brett Morrison daily, presumably trying to coordinate their response to your actions." Derek's jaw tightened. Even now, they were still together. Still scheming. "There's something else," Patricia continued. "My investigator discovered that Chloe withdrew $30,000 from her savings account this morning. She also purchased a plane ticket to San Francisco, departing Friday." "Running away?" "It appears so. But here's the interesting part. The ticket is one way, and it's in her maiden name only." Derek processed this information. Chloe was planning to disappear, probably hoping to start over somewhere else with Brett's baby. It was a smart move, but it wouldn't save her. Derek's phone rang. This time it was his office. "Mr. Thornfield?" Jennifer's voice was tense. "Brett Morrison is here. He's demanding to see you, and he's agitated." Derek glanced at his watch. 2:15 p.m. Perfect timing. Send him up to conference room B. Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes. He ended the call and turned to Patricia. "I need you to be a witness to this conversation. Bring a recording device." "Derek, I don't think." "Patricia, in 5 minutes, Brett Morrison is going to confess to fraud, conspiracy, and probably threaten me. I need it documented." They walked to Derek's office, building in silence. In the elevator, Derek felt the familiar calm that had always preceded combat operations. His heartbeat slowed, his breathing steadied, his mind sharpened to a laser focus. Brett Morrison was pacing like a caged animal when Derek entered conference room B. At 32, Brett was still military fit, but Derek could see stress eating at him. Dark circles under his eyes, a tremor in his hands, sweat stains on his shirt despite the cool weather. "Derek, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. We need to talk." Derek sat down calmly, Patricia beside him with her briefcase. "I'm listening." Brett glanced nervously at Patricia. "This is private business. Ms. Hawkins is my attorney. Everything you say here is privileged." Now talk. Brett ran his hands through his hair. Look, I know you know about Chloe and me. Someone sent you something at the wedding, right? I saw you leave. Keep going. Derek, it's not what you think. She was vulnerable, confused about the engagement. I was helping her work through her feelings, and things just happened. It was a mistake. Derek's expression remained perfectly neutral. How many times did this mistake happen? What? 8 months, Brett. 8 months you've been fucking my fiancée behind my back. 8 months you've been coming to my home, eating my food, pretending to be my friend while you betrayed me. So tell me exactly how many times this mistake happened. Brett's face went pale. Derek, listen, and tell me about the baby. Is it mine or yours? The question hung in the air like a blade. Brett opened and closed his mouth several times before Derek continued. Tell me about your gambling debts. Tell me about Tony Vega. Tell me about your plan to steal my company to pay off your bookies. Brett stepped backward as if he'd been slapped. How did you? I know everything, Brett. Every text message, every secret meeting, every lie you've told me for the past 8 months. The only question now is whether you're going to keep lying or start telling the truth. Brett slumped into a chair, his facade crumbling. Derek, I'm in serious trouble. Tony Vega isn't just a bookie. He's connected to some very dangerous people. If I don't pay him back, that's not my problem anymore. Yes, it is. Brett's voice rose desperately. Don't you understand? If they kill me, they'll come after you too. You're my business partner. They'll assume you have my money. Derek smiled coldly. Actually, I'm not your business partner anymore. You violated our partnership agreement when you used your shares as collateral. As of this afternoon, you own exactly 0% of Apex Protection Services. Brett stared at him in horror. You can't do that. Already did. Check your phone. You should have received service papers about an hour ago. Brett fumbled for his phone with shaking hands. Derek watched his face crumble as he read the legal documents. This is insane. You can't just steal my company. I'm not stealing anything. You forfeited your rights when you committed fraud. The buyback price is $40,000, the original value of your stake, minus legal fees and damages, of course. Derek, please. I'm begging you. I made a mistake, but I'll make it right. Chloe means nothing to me. It was just sex. You and I are brothers. We served together. We've been through hell together. Derek stood slowly, his eyes never leaving Brett's face. You're right. We did serve together. We were brothers, which is why what you did is unforgivable. He started toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Brett, you might want to start looking for a new career. I'm sending some interesting files about your service record to a journalist friend at the Washington Post. Something about civilian casualties in Kandahar. I'm sure the Pentagon will be very interested in reopening that investigation. Brett's face went white with terror. Derek, no. You can't. If that comes out, you'll go to federal prison for war crimes. Yes, I know. But you'll go down too. You covered up. Derek turned back with a smile that would have frozen hellfire. Brett, I've been planning my exit strategy from the moment I decided to protect you. The difference between you and me is that I always think 3 moves ahead. He walked out, leaving Brett Morrison sitting alone in the conference room, staring at the ruins of his life. The first strike was complete, but Derek was just getting started. Chapter 5. Cornered Prey. Derek returned to his apartment that evening to find Chloe waiting in the lobby. She looked haggard, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She was clutching a small overnight bag, and Derek noticed her hands were trembling. Derek, please. We need to talk. He walked past her toward the elevators without breaking stride. No, we don't. Derek, wait. She hurried after him, her heels clicking on the marble floor. I know you're angry, but let me explain. Explain what? That you've been fucking my business partner for 8 months? That you're pregnant with his child? That you plan to use our marriage to help him steal my company? Derek's voice was deadly quiet as they entered the elevator alone. Chloe's face crumpled. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The elevator doors closed. I've seen every text message, Chloe. Every photo. Every detail of your little plan. There was no plan. It just happened. Derek turned to face her fully for the first time since the wedding. Tell me about Tony Vega. Chloe went pale. I don't know who that is. Try again. Tell me about Brett's gambling debts. Tell me about his plan to use your marriage to me as leverage to take over my company and pay off his bookies. Derek, I swear I didn't know. You knew enough to withdraw $30,000 from your savings account this morning. You knew enough to buy a one-way ticket to San Francisco. The elevator reached the 15th floor, Derek's penthouse. As the doors opened, Chloe grabbed his arm. Derek, please. I'm pregnant. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Derek looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. Whose baby is it? I don't know. Yes, you do. The timing makes it impossible to be mine. You've been taking birth control pills the entire time we've been together. I've seen them in your purse. The only time you stopped was 8 months ago, right around the time you started fucking Brett. Chloe began crying harder. Derek, I love you. I've always loved you. What happened with Brett was just what? A mistake? You've been making the same mistake for 8 months. Derek stepped out of the elevator. Find somewhere else to go, Chloe. You're not welcome here. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have any money. You ruined Brett. He can't help me. Derek turned back to her with cold eyes. That's not my problem anymore. As the elevator doors began to close, Chloe stuck her foot out to stop them. Derek, wait. There's something else you need to know. Something in her tone made Derek pause. What? Brett. He's not just involved with gambling. He's been selling information about your clients. Derek's blood went cold. What kind of information? Security details. Client names. I don't understand all of it, but he's been meeting with someone named Vincent Kozlov. They've been paying him for details about your government contracts. Derek grabbed Chloe's arm and pulled her into his apartment, slamming the door behind them. Tell me everything. Now. Vincent Kozlov was a name Derek knew well. A Russian arms dealer who operated through a network of shell companies. If Brett had been selling classified information to foreign operatives, it wasn't just betrayal, it was treason. Start from the beginning, Derek demanded. Everything you know. Chloe sank onto his couch, still crying. About 3 months ago, Brett started having meetings with this Russian man. He told me it was just business consulting, but I heard them talking once. The Russian was asking about your Pentagon contracts, your client list, security protocols for government facilities. What did Brett tell him? I don't know exactly, but I saw Brett photographing documents from your office. He said it was just copying files for backup, but now. Derek's mind raced. If Brett had been selling classified information, it explained how he'd been able to maintain his lifestyle despite massive gambling debts. It also meant Derek's company, and possibly Derek himself, were now targets of a federal investigation. How long has this been going on? I think since before we started, before Brett and I. Chloe couldn't finish the sentence. Derek pulled out his secure phone and dialed a number. Marcus? It's Derek. I need an emergency meeting. We have a national security problem. He ended the call and turned back to Chloe. You're not going to San Francisco. What? You're coming with me. You're going to tell the FBI everything you know about Brett's activities with Kozlov. Derek, no. If I cooperate with the FBI, Brett will know I betrayed him. He'll hurt me. Brett is about to be arrested for treason. He won't be in a position to hurt anyone. Derek's secure line rang. Marcus Webb's voice was tense. Derek, we have a problem. I just got word from my Pentagon contacts. There's been a security breach involving your company. FBI counterintelligence is opening an investigation. You need to get ahead of this immediately. I know about the breach. I have a witness who can testify about Brett Morrison's activities with Vincent Kozlov. Jesus Christ. How deep does this go? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. Can you arrange a meeting with the FBI? I'll make some calls. Derek, if Morrison has been selling classified information, anyone with access to those files could be considered suspect. That includes you. Derek looked at Chloe, who was listening with growing terror. Then we need to move fast. I want Morrison in federal custody before he has a chance to destroy evidence or disappear. Agreed. I'll have something set up within the hour. Derek ended the call and turned to Chloe. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to cooperate fully with federal investigators. You're going to tell them everything you know about Brett's activities. In exchange, you'll receive immunity from prosecution. What about us? Derek's expression was stone cold. There is no us. There never was. But if you help me destroy Brett Morrison completely, I might let you disappear quietly instead of ensuring you're prosecuted as an accomplice. Chloe nodded frantically. I'll do whatever you want. Good. Because Brett Morrison is about to learn what happens when someone betrays Derek Thornfield. And this time, there won't be any mercy. Derek walked to his safe and pulled out a thick file, his insurance policy against Brett that he'd maintained since Afghanistan. But now he wouldn't just be ending Brett's career. He'd be ending his freedom permanently. Some betrayals could never be forgiven. Some enemies could never be allowed to survive. Brett Morrison was about to discover that Derek Thornfield was far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. Chapter 6. The Net Closes. The FBI field office in downtown Portland was a fortress of glass and steel that Derek had visited many times in his professional capacity. Today, however, he wasn't here as a security consultant. He was here as a witness to treason. Special Agent Catherine Reed, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in counterintelligence, sat across from Derek and Chloe in a sterile interview room. Between them lay stacks of documents, photographs, and digital evidence that painted a damning picture of Brett Morrison's criminal activities. Mr. Thornfield, you're certain about the timeline of these meetings between Morrison and Kozlov? Agent Reed's voice was crisp, professional. Absolutely. My company's security footage shows Morrison accessing classified files after hours on 17 separate occasions over the past 3 months. Each access corresponded with bank deposits to an offshore account registered to a shell company controlled by Kozlov's organization. Derek slid a folder across the table. Those are the financial records my investigator obtained. Morrison received over $200,000 for selling sensitive information about Pentagon's security protocols. Agent Reed studied the documents, her expression growing darker. Ms. Reynolds, you witnessed these meetings personally? Chloe nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Brett told me they were just business consultations, but I heard them talking about military contracts, security weaknesses at government facilities. The Russian man, Kozlov, he was very specific about what information he wanted. Can you identify Kozlov from photographs? Yes. I saw him 3 times at Brett's apartment. Agent Reed made notes on her legal pad. Mr. Thornfield, I need to ask, why didn't you report these suspicions earlier? Derek's jaw tightened. Because until 3 days ago, I trusted Brett Morrison with my life. We served together in Afghanistan. He was my business partner and best friend. I couldn't believe he was capable of treason. What changed your mind? Derek glanced at Chloe, then back to Agent Reed. I discovered he was having an affair with my fiancée and planning to steal my company. When I investigated his activities more closely, I uncovered the espionage. Agent Reed leaned forward. Mr. Thornfield, I need to be clear about something. If Morrison has been selling classified information, anyone with access to those files could potentially be charged as an accomplice. That includes you. I understand. That's why I'm here voluntarily, with evidence and a witness. Nevertheless, you'll need to submit to a polygraph examination and provide a complete accounting of your activities during the relevant time period. Derek nodded grimly. Whatever you need. Agent Reed's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then stood. Excuse me for a moment. She left the room, and Derek turned to Chloe. Are you holding anything back? No, I've told him everything. Derek, what's going to happen to me? If you continue cooperating, you'll probably receive immunity. If you lie or hold back information, you'll be prosecuted as an accomplice to espionage. Chloe's face went pale. What about the baby? What about it? If Brett goes to prison, I'll be alone. Derek's expression was ice cold. You were alone the moment you decided to betray me. Agent Reed returned, her expression serious. Mr. Thornfield, we've been monitoring Morrison's communications. He's planning to leave the country tonight. Derek's hands clenched into fists. Where? Moscow, via Vancouver. We believe he's been compromised and is making a run for Russian protection. You can't let him escape. We don't intend to, but we need your help. Morrison has agreed to meet with you this evening, presumably to try to negotiate some kind of deal. We want you to wear a wire and get him to confess to the espionage charges. Derek considered this. What if he's armed? What if he suspects it's a trap? We'll have tactical teams positioned throughout the area. But Mr. Thornfield, I need to be clear. This operation carries significant risk. Morrison is desperate, and desperate people are unpredictable. I'll do it. Derek, no. Chloe grabbed his arm. Brett's been acting crazy since you destroyed his business partnership. He's been drinking heavily, making threats. What if he tries to hurt you? Derek looked down at her hand on his arm, then gently removed it. Brett Morrison stopped being a threat to me the moment I decided to destroy him. Agent Reed studied Derek's face. There's something else. Our investigation has uncovered evidence that Morrison may have been involved in war crimes during his service in Afghanistan. Civilian casualties that were covered up. Derek's expression remained neutral. What kind of evidence? Official reports that were allegedly destroyed, but copies were retained by certain parties. If these allegations are true, Morrison could face a military tribunal in addition to the espionage charges. Derek nodded slowly. I see. Mr. Thornfield, if you have any knowledge of these incidents, now would be the time to share that information. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Agent Reed, Brett Morrison murdered an entire family in Kandahar province, an elderly man, his wife, and their 3 grandchildren. He claimed they were combatants, but they were unarmed civilians. I helped cover it up to protect my unit. Agent Reed's pen stopped moving. You participated in a cover-up of war crimes. Yes, I destroyed evidence and falsified reports. I've regretted it every day since, but I thought I was protecting my men. Mr. Thornfield, you realize this admission could result in serious criminal charges against you? Derek looked directly into her eyes. Agent Reed, Brett Morrison is a traitor, a war criminal, and a murderer. If putting me in prison is the price for ensuring he faces justice, then so be it. Agent Reed stared at him for a long moment, then made a note. Your cooperation will be taken into consideration during any proceedings. She stood and gathered her files. The meeting with Morrison is scheduled for 8 p.m. at Pioneer Courthouse Square. We'll brief you on the technical details in an hour. As they prepared to leave, Derek turned to Chloe one final time. After tonight, you're going to disappear. You're going to take whatever immunity deal the FBI offers, move somewhere far away, and never contact me again. Do you understand? Chloe nodded, tears streaming down her face. Derek, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Derek's expression softened slightly. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix anything. He walked away without looking back, leaving Chloe alone with the wreckage of her choices. Tonight, Derek would face his former best friend for the last time. One of them would walk away from that confrontation, and Derek had no intention of letting it be Brett Morrison. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. Pioneer Courthouse Square was bustling with evening commuters when Derek arrived at 7:45 p.m. The wire taped to his chest felt alien, a constant reminder that every word spoken would be recorded for federal prosecutors. Agent Reed's voice came through his nearly invisible earpiece. Target approaching from the northeast corner. Stay calm. Let him talk, and try to get him to admit to the espionage charges. Derek spotted Brett immediately. His former partner looked haggard, almost manic, wearing dark sunglasses despite the overcast sky. He carried a duffel bag and kept glancing over his shoulder as he approached. Derek! Brett's voice was too loud, too forced. Thanks for meeting me, brother. They sat on a bench near the center of the square. Derek noted that Brett's hands were shaking slightly, and there was a telltale bulge under his jacket that suggested he was armed. You look like hell, Brett. Yeah, well, it's been a rough few days. Thanks to you. Brett's voice carried an edge of desperate anger. Derek, we need to work something out. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. Has it? You know it has. Look, I fucked up with Chloe. I admit that. But destroying my entire life over it, taking away my company's shares, that's extreme, even for you. Derek kept his expression neutral. Is that why you called this meeting? To negotiate. Brett leaned closer, lowering his voice. Derek, there are things you don't understand. I'm in serious trouble. Not just with Chloe, not just with the company. I'm talking about life and death trouble. Tell me about Vincent Kozlov. Brett's face went white. How do you know that name? I know a lot of things, Brett. I know about your gambling debts. I know about the Russian money. I know about the classified files you've been selling. Brett stood abruptly, his hand moving toward his jacket. Who told you that? Sit down, Brett. We're just talking. No, we're not just talking. You're fucking recording this, aren't you? Brett's voice rose, causing nearby pedestrians to stare. You son of a bitch, you're wearing a wire. Derek remained seated, his voice calm. Brett, you're paranoid. Sit down and let's work this out. Work what out? You've already destroyed everything. My business, my reputation, my future. You destroyed those things yourself when you decided to betray me. Brett's laugh was bitter, almost hysterical. Betray you? Derek, you have no idea what betrayal looks like. You want to know about Kozlov? You want to know why I had to sell information to the Russians? I'm listening. Brett sat back down, but his hand remained near his weapon. 2 years ago, you left me hanging in Afghanistan. You covered up what happened in Kandahar, sure, but you also left me carrying the guilt alone. You moved on, built your company, got rich, while I've been living with nightmares every single night. So, you decided to become a traitor? I decided to survive. Do you know what PTSD therapy costs? Do you know what it's like to wake up screaming about dead children every night? The gambling wasn't about money. It was about trying to feel something other than guilt. Derek's voice remained steady. That doesn't justify espionage, Brett, doesn't it? You built Apex Protection Services using contacts from our military service. You profited from the same system that covered up my war crimes. At least when I sold information to Kozlov, I was honest about what I was doing. You were selling out your own country. I was selling out a country that abandoned me. Brett's voice cracked. Derek, I killed innocent people, children, and the army just covered it up and sent me home with a pat on the back and a discharge check. Derek felt a flicker of something. Not sympathy, but understanding. Brett, I offer to help you get treatment. I offer to help you build a new life. With Chloe? Yeah, your charity came with strings attached, didn't it? What's that supposed to mean? Brett's smile was ugly. You think Chloe just happened to fall for me? You think this was some random affair? Derek's blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying I was recruited by Kozlov 18 months ago. I'm saying they needed access to your company, your files, your life. And I'm saying Chloe was part of the operation from the beginning. Derek's world tilted. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself, Derek, how did you meet Chloe? At that charity gala, right? The one benefiting Eastern European refugees? The one organized by a foundation that turns out to be funded by Russian shell companies. Derek's hands clenched into fists. No, she played you perfectly. The innocent event coordinator charmed by the wealthy American security consultant. Kozlov's people had been watching you for months, studying your patterns, your weaknesses. They knew you were lonely, isolated by your work. They knew exactly what kind of woman would appeal to you. Agent Reed's voice crackled in Derek's earpiece. Keep him talking. We need more details about the operation. If that's true, Derek said slowly, then why are you telling me? Brett laughed bitterly. Because it doesn't matter anymore. In 3 hours, I'll be on a plane to Vancouver and then to Moscow. Kozlov's extraction plan is already in motion. And Chloe was always expendable. The pregnancy wasn't an accident. It was insurance. They needed something to keep you emotionally invested while I completed the intelligence gathering. Derek's vision went red. Whose baby is it? Does it matter? Could be mine, could be yours, could be some other operatives. The point was to complicate your life enough that you wouldn't notice what was really happening. Derek stood slowly, his entire body trembling with rage. Brett, you're telling me that my entire relationship with Chloe was a Russian intelligence operation? Your entire life has been a Russian intelligence operation, Derek. Your company, your contracts, your personal relationships. We've been inside your head for over a year. Derek's earpiece crackled again. Teams are moving in. Keep him calm for 30 more seconds. But Derek was beyond calm. He was beyond rational thought. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Brett by the throat and slammed him against the bench. You destroyed my life for money. Brett gasped, clawing at Derek's hands. Derek can't breathe. Good. Derek's voice was a whisper of pure hatred. I want you to understand something, Brett. When the FBI arrests you in about 10 seconds, you're going to federal prison for espionage. When the military gets done with you, you'll face execution for war crimes. And if somehow you survive all that, I will personally hunt you down and finish what I should have done in Kandahar. Brett's eyes bulged as he fought for air. Around them, FBI tactical teams emerged from the crowd, weapons drawn. Derek Thornfield released the suspect and stepped back. Derek looked into Brett's terrified eyes one last time, then released his grip. Brett collapsed to the ground, gasping and coughing. Brett Morrison, you're under arrest for espionage, conspiracy, and violations of the Espionage Act, Agent Reed announced as tactical officers surrounded them. As they cuffed Brett and read him his rights, Derek felt something cold and empty settle in his chest. His entire life had been a lie. His company, his relationships, his trust, all of it had been manipulated by foreign operatives. But as Derek watched Brett Morrison being dragged away in handcuffs, he realized something else. He wasn't the victim in this story anymore. He was about to become something much more dangerous. Chapter 8. Unraveling Truth. Derek sat in the FBI debriefing room at 2 a.m., his mind reeling from Brett's revelations. Agent Reed placed a cup of coffee in front of him, but Derek ignored it, staring at the photographs spread across the table. Surveillance images of Chloe meeting with unknown contacts, financial records showing payments from Russian shell companies, and communication intercepts that painted a picture of an elaborate intelligence operation. Mr. Thornfield, I need you to understand the scope of what we're dealing with, Agent Reed said, settling into the chair across from him. Based on Morrison's confession and our own investigation, this operation has been running for over 2 years. Derek's voice was hoarse. How much of my life was compromised? That's what we're trying to determine. Tell me about your relationship with Chloe Reynolds, every detail from the beginning. Derek closed his eyes, forcing himself to relive memories that now felt poisoned. We met at the Cascade Foundation Charity Gala 18 months ago. She was the event coordinator. I was there because my company had donated to their refugee assistance program. Did she approach you? Or did you approach her? She bumped into me at the bar, spilled wine on my jacket. Derek's hands clenched. She was so apologetic, insisted on paying for the cleaning. We started talking. Agent Reed made notes. What did you discuss? My work initially. She seemed genuinely interested in security consulting. Asked intelligent questions about protecting vulnerable populations. I was impressed by her knowledge. What kind of knowledge? Derek thought back, seeing the conversation with new eyes. She knew about specific military contracts, current events in Eastern Europe, details about refugee movements that most civilians wouldn't know. Red flags you missed because you were attracted to her. Exactly. Derek's voice carried bitter self-recrimination. She played me perfectly. Every conversation, every shared interest, every moment of apparent vulnerability, it was all calculated. Agent Reed slid another photograph across the table. Do you recognize this man? Derek studied the image, a well-dressed man in his 50s with silver hair and cold eyes. No. Should I? Dmitry Volkov, Kozlov's lieutenant. He's been in Portland for the past 6 months, coordinating the operation. Our surveillance shows him meeting regularly with both Morrison and Reynolds. Derek stared at the photograph, feeling sick. How many people were involved? At least a dozen that we know of. This wasn't a simple espionage operation. It was a comprehensive penetration of your personal and professional life. Agent Reed's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up grimly. Mr. Thornfield, we have a problem. Chloe Reynolds is missing. Derek's head snapped up. What do you mean missing? She left the safe house about an hour ago. Told the agents she was going to the bathroom and never came back. Security footage shows her leaving through a service exit. Derek stood abruptly. She's running. That's our assumption. We've issued a BOLO alert and contacted airport security, but Derek's secure phone rang. Unknown number. He showed it to Agent Reed, who nodded and activated recording equipment. Derek Thornfield. Hello, Derek. Chloe's voice was different, colder, more controlled. The vulnerable act was gone completely. Chloe, where are you? Somewhere safe. I wanted to call and thank you. Thank me for destroying Brett Morrison so thoroughly. He was becoming a liability, and you solved that problem for us. Derek felt his world shift again. Us? Chloe laughed, and the sound was like ice. Did you really think Brett was the mastermind? He's a broken soldier with gambling debts and PTSD. Useful, but hardly strategic material. You're the real operative. Very good. It only took you 18 months to figure that out. Agent Reed was frantically signaling to technicians, try to trace the call. Derek kept Chloe talking. How long have you been working for the Russians? Since I was 16. Moscow University, then SVR training. I've been Chloe Reynolds for 3 years, long enough to build a complete identity. And Brett, a convenient patsy. We recruited him 2 years ago when his gambling debts made him desperate. But he was never more than a foot soldier. Derek's voice was deadly quiet. What about the baby? What baby, Derek? I'm not pregnant. I never was. Brett thought I was because I told him so. You thought I might be because I let you think so. It was just another layer of manipulation. Derek closed his eyes, feeling the full weight of his deception. The positive pregnancy test, easily faked. The morning sickness, acting. The doctor's appointments, meeting with my handlers. Why are you telling me this? Because my mission is complete, and I wanted you to understand exactly how thoroughly you've been played. For 18 months, I've had access to your home, your office, your most classified files. I've photographed every document, recorded every conversation, mapped every security protocol. Agent Reed passed Derek a note. Keep her talking. We're close to a trace. What was the endgame? Derek asked. Your company was just the beginning. Through Apex Protection Services, we've identified weaknesses in dozens of government facilities. Your client list reads like a directory of American intelligence assets. We've been inside the Pentagon, the CIA, the NSA, all through contracts you provided. Derek felt sick. How many people are going to die because of the information you stole? That's not really my concern. I'm just a data collector. You're a traitor. I'm a patriot, just not to your country. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Chloe continued. Derek, I want you to know that I did enjoy parts of our relationship. You're a good man, and under different circumstances, I might have actually fallen for you. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Goodbye, Derek. The line went dead. Agent Reed looked up from her equipment. We traced the call to a cell tower near the airport, but she's probably already gone. Derek slumped back in his chair, the full magnitude of his situation finally sinking in. She's right. I've been completely played. My company, my security clearances, my entire life, it's all compromised. Mr. Thornfield, we're going to need you to provide a complete inventory of every file, every client, every piece of classified information that might have been exposed. Derek nodded numbly. It's everything. She had access to everything. Agent Reed's expression was sympathetic but professional. There's something else. Based on what we've learned, the Justice Department is likely to bring charges against you for compromising national security. What kind of charges? Negligent handling of classified information. Failure to report suspected espionage. Possibly treason, if they can prove you knowingly assisted the operation. Derek looked up at her with hollow eyes. I didn't know. I believe you. But ignorance isn't a defense in espionage cases. Derek stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Portland skyline. In one night, he'd lost everything. His company, his reputation, his freedom, his faith in his own judgment. But as he stared into the darkness, Derek felt something else stirring. Not despair, but cold, focused rage. Chloe Reynolds and her handlers thought they'd won. They thought Derek Thornfield was finished. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Chapter 9. Final Justice. 3 months later, Derek sat in a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., waiting for his sentencing hearing. The government had offered him a plea deal, 5 years in federal prison in exchange for his cooperation in identifying compromised assets and rebuilding security protocols. His lawyer, Patricia Hawkins, had advised him to take it. Derek had other plans. All rise for the Honorable Judge Elizabeth Warren, the bailiff announced. Judge Warren, a stern woman in her 60s, took her seat and reviewed the case file. Mr. Thornfield, you've pleaded guilty to negligent handling of classified information and failure to report suspected espionage. Before I impose sentence, do you have anything to say? Derek stood slowly. Your Honor, I do. Proceed. 3 months ago, I thought I was the victim of a Russian intelligence operation. I believed I had been deceived, manipulated, and betrayed by people I trusted. I was wrong. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Agent Reed, sitting in the gallery, looked confused. I wasn't the victim, Your Honor. I was the bait. Derek reached into his jacket and withdrew a thick manila envelope. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that this entire operation was a counterintelligence mission authorized by the Department of Defense. The prosecutor shot to his feet. Objection. This is the first we've heard of any. Overruled, Judge Warren said, her eyes fixed on Derek. Mr. Thornfield approached the bench. Derek walked forward and handed the envelope to the judge. Inside were classified documents bearing DoD seals, authorization codes, and a signature of General Michael Harrison, Derek's former commanding officer. Judge Warren studied the papers for several minutes, her expression growing more serious. Mr. Thornfield, these documents appear to authorize you to conduct a false flag operation against Russian intelligence assets. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. 18 months ago, military intelligence identified Vincent Kozlov's organization as a significant threat to national security. They needed a way to identify and neutralize his entire network. Derek turned to face the courtroom. The military couldn't conduct the operation directly because Kozlov's people were too sophisticated. They needed someone with legitimate access to classified information, someone who could be convincingly compromised. Agent Reed was staring at Derek in shock. That's impossible. We monitored everything. You monitored what I wanted you to monitor, Derek said calmly. Every document Chloe Reynolds photographed, every file she accessed, every piece of intelligence she stole. It was all carefully prepared disinformation. Derek walked back to the defendant's table and opened his briefcase, withdrawing a laptop computer. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to demonstrate something. Judge Warren nodded, and Derek opened the laptop. The screen showed a real-time satellite feed of a compound in Eastern Europe. This is a facility outside Moscow where Kozlov's organization has been analyzing the intelligence they believe they stole from my company. What they don't know is that every piece of information was designed to lead them into a trap. On the screen, military vehicles were surrounding the compound. Derek checked his watch. In approximately 30 seconds, a joint U.S.-NATO task force will capture Vincent Kozlov, Dmitry Volkov, and 43 other members of their espionage network. The courtroom was dead silent as they watched the operation unfold on screen. Explosions lit up the facility as special forces breached the perimeter. Derek turned back to Judge Warren. The documents they've been acting on for the past year contained false information about military installations, fake security protocols, and invented intelligence assets. Every move they've made based on stolen intelligence has been predicted and monitored. What about Brett Morrison? Agent Reed demanded. What about his confession? Derek's smile was cold. Brett Morrison is exactly what he appeared to be, a traitor motivated by gambling debts and psychological instability. His recruitment by Kozlov's people was genuine, which made him the perfect entry point for our operation. And Chloe Reynolds? Major Elena Volkov, SVR-trained operative and Dmitry Volkov's daughter. She's currently in federal custody at an undisclosed location, where she's been for the past 3 months. Agent Reed stood up, her face flushed with anger. Then who the hell made that phone call from the airport? Derek's expression didn't change. I did. Voice modulation technology. I needed you to believe she had escaped, so you wouldn't question why the investigation was being transferred to military jurisdiction. Judge Warren leaned forward. Mr. Thornfield, if these documents are authentic, why wasn't this court informed of the classified nature of your activities? Because the operation required absolute authenticity, Your Honor. Everyone, the FBI, the prosecutors, my own lawyer, had to believe I was genuinely compromised. Any hint that this was a counterintelligence operation would have compromised the mission. Derek gestured to the laptop screen, where the satellite feed showed Russian operatives being led away in handcuffs. As of this moment, we've dismantled the largest Russian espionage network operating in North America. We've identified over 200 intelligence assets, captured classified weapons technology, and intercepted communications that prevented 3 separate terrorist attacks. The prosecutor was frantically whispering with FBI agents. Patricia Hawkins looked stunned. Judge Warren studied the DoD documents again, then looked up at Derek. Mr. Thornfield, these authorizations appear genuine, but I'll need verification from the Pentagon before I can proceed. Of course, Your Honor. Derek's secure phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then showed the screen to the judge. That's General Harrison. He's waiting outside to provide testimony if needed. Judge Warren called a recess, and Derek was escorted to a holding room where General Harrison was waiting. A distinguished man in his 50s wearing dress blues decorated with commendations from 3 decades of service. Son, the general said, clasping Derek's hand. Outstanding work. The intelligence we gathered from this operation will protect American lives for years to come. What about Brett Morrison? Morrison will serve his time. His crimes were real, even if they serve our purposes. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, even when they're useful. Derek nodded. And Elena Volkov? She'll be exchanged for American assets, currently held in Russia. Standard prisoner swap. Derek was quiet for a moment. General, what happens now? Now, you disappear. New identity, new life, substantial compensation for your service. The official record will show that Derek Thornfield died in federal custody. And unofficially, General Harrison smiled. Unofficially, you'll be available for consultation on similar operations. There are other networks, other threats that require your particular talents. An hour later, Judge Warren returned to the bench. After consulting with Pentagon officials and reviewing classified documentation, she dismissed all charges against Derek Thornfield. As Derek walked out of the courthouse, he thought about the past 18 months. Brett Morrison and Elena Volkov had both tried to destroy his life through betrayal and deception. In the end, they had given him something far more valuable, the chance to serve his country in a way most people never could. Derek Thornfield had learned to be patient, to think strategically, to turn his enemies' weapons against them. He had learned that the greatest revenge wasn't destruction. It was making your enemies serve your purposes without them ever knowing it. In 6 hours, Derek Thornfield would officially cease to exist. Tomorrow, someone else would begin a new mission in a new place against new enemies who thought they were clever enough to destroy American security. They would learn, as Brett Morrison and Elena Volkov had learned, that some men couldn't be broken. Some betrayals couldn't be allowed to stand. And some victories were worth waiting 18 months to achieve. Derek walked into the Washington, D.C. sunset, disappearing into a crowd of strangers who would never know that they owed their safety to a man who had mastered the art of turning betrayal into justice. The game was over. Derek Thornfield had won. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Chapter 1. Stone Cold. Colonel Ryan Stone wasn't a man who believed in coincidences. 15 years in Delta Force had taught him that patterns always revealed themselves if you looked hard enough. The signs had been there for months. Allison's increasingly brief phone calls, the vague excuses about why she couldn't video chat, the way she'd stopped asking when he was coming home. 30 days, maximum, Commander Phillips said, sliding the mission brief across the table in the secure operations tent. In and out of Yemen. High-value target extraction. Ryan nodded, his weathered face betraying nothing of the turmoil in his marriage. At 42, his body bore the scars of countless operations, but he kept himself in impeccable condition. His men respected him not just for his tactical brilliance, but for his composure under pressure. Among the other operators, he was known simply as Stone, partly for his last name, but mostly for his unflinching demeanor in crisis situations. "Something on your mind, Colonel?" Phillips asked. Ryan tapped the file. "Nothing relevant to the mission, sir." The truth was, he'd received a text from his childhood friend Drew Mercer just before the briefing. Drew worked at First National Bank in their hometown of Lakewood Colorado, and his message had been cryptic, unusual activity on your accounts. Call when you can. Ryan had been unable to reach Drew before the briefing, but his instincts were already mapping contingencies. His marriage to Allison had been wonderful once, a decade of genuine happiness before his repeated deployments, and her growing resentment had created a chasm between them. They'd been high school sweethearts, married right after college. She'd supported his military career initially, but the long absences had taken their toll. We move out at 0500, Phillips concluded. As the team dispersed to prepare, Ryan retrieved his encrypted satellite phone. Drew answered on the second ring. I've been watching your accounts like you asked, Drew said without preamble. Allison made a withdrawal of $50,000 yesterday. She's been making regular withdrawals of $5,000 to $10,000 for the past 3 months. Ryan had asked Drew to keep an eye on the accounts 6 months ago when he'd first noticed discrepancies in their finances. Is she withdrawing from the joint account? Yes, but she hasn't touched the others. She doesn't know about them, I assume. No. Ryan had opened separate accounts 2 years ago when he'd first suspected something was wrong. The military had taught him to always have contingency plans. Thanks, Drew. I need another favor. Name it. I want you to prepare paperwork transferring ownership of the cabin to my sister Lauren. Ryan's grandfather had left him a cabin in the mountains, a property that wasn't part of his marriage assets since it was inherited. And I need you to courier new account cards to the address I gave you. Already done. Lauren can sign tomorrow. Drew hesitated. Ryan, I'm sorry, but there's more. Ben Wallace came into the bank with her last week. They seemed close. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. Ben Wallace, his neighbor, a pharmaceutical sales rep who drove a red Corvette and always had a ready smile. A man who had dined at their table numerous times during Ryan's brief periods at home. I appreciate the intel, Ryan said evenly. What are you going to do? Ryan checked his watch. First, I'm going to Yemen to extract a high-value asset. Then I'm coming home to extract myself from a toxic situation. After ending the call, Ryan accessed his personal email. There was a message from his private investigator, photos of Allison and Ben entering hotels, having intimate dinners, shopping for furniture together. The most recent photos showed Ben's car parked in Ryan's driveway overnight, while Ryan was supposedly deployed. With methodical precision, Ryan drafted emails to his lawyer, financial advisor, and security company. He authorized specific actions to be taken in his absence. Then he composed one final email to his sister Lauren with instructions about the cabin and a storage unit he'd rented 6 months ago, already filled with the personal possessions he truly valued. As he prepared for the mission, Ryan's mind was already executing a different operation, one that would secure his future and ensure that betrayal carried consequences. Chapter 2. The Email. The Yemen extraction had gone sideways almost immediately. Bad intelligence had placed their target in a compound crawling with hostiles. Ryan's team had sustained casualties, though they'd ultimately succeeded in retrieving both the primary target and his family. Ryan himself had taken a bullet through his shoulder, though he'd continued to command the operation without faltering. 3 weeks into what was supposed to be a month-long deployment, Ryan was lying on a cot in a field hospital when Phillips brought him a satellite phone. Call from stateside, Phillips said, his expression carefully neutral. Seems important. It was Drew again. I wanted to call before you checked your email. Allison emptied the joint account yesterday, all $418,000. She left exactly $5. Ryan's expression didn't change. The other accounts? Untouched. She doesn't know about them. And the cabin paperwork? All transferred to Lauren, as you requested. The deed recording happened yesterday. Ryan nodded. Thank you. After hanging up, Ryan used the phone to check his email. There it was, time-stamped 4 hours ago. Ryan, I don't know when you'll get this, but I can't do this anymore. The distance, the secrets, the constant fear, it's too much. I've filed for divorce. The papers will be waiting when you return. I've taken my fair share of our joint account to start my new life. I've also decided to stay in the house until it sells. It's half mine, after all. I hope someday you'll understand that we both deserve happiness. Mine is with Ben now. He understands me in ways you never tried to. Allison. Ryan read the email twice, memorizing every word, every justification. Then he typed a single word in response. Understood. He handed the phone back to Phillips. I need to be on the next transport back to the States. Your wound is not mission critical. My presence at home, however, is time sensitive. Phillips studied him. Family emergency? You could say that. Ryan's voice was calm, but his eyes had taken on the cold focus his team recognized from their most dangerous operations. 24 hours later, Ryan was on a military transport plane heading back to Colorado. During the flight, he reviewed the contents of an encrypted file on his tablet, the results of 6 months of quiet investigation and preparation. There were financial records, surveillance photos, account numbers, property deeds, and recordings, all meticulously organized. Upon landing at Peterson Air Force Base, Ryan was met by Lauren, his younger sister. At 38, she shared his strong jawline and analytical mind, though she'd channeled hers into becoming a corporate attorney instead of a military career. How bad is it? She asked as they drove toward Lakewood. Calculated betrayal, Ryan replied, but not unanticipated. Lauren glanced at him. The cabin transfer is complete. I've moved the items from your storage unit there, as requested, and the security upgrades? Installed last week. Full surveillance system with remote access, as well as the physical upgrades you specified. Ryan nodded. She doesn't know I'm back yet. No, but Ryan. Lauren hesitated. Ben Wallace has moved in. Your neighbors called me. I'm aware. Ryan's voice was eerily calm. It's actually more convenient this way. Lauren knew her brother well enough to recognize the dangerous edge in his voice. What are you planning to do? Ryan's smile didn't reach his eyes. I'm going to say hello to my wife. Chapter 3. Foundations of Vengeance. Ryan didn't go directly to the house. Instead, he headed to Drew's office at First National Bank. Drew had been his friend since 3rd grade, and while their paths had diverged, Drew into finance, Ryan into the military. Their loyalty had remained constant. Drew was waiting with a thick folder of documents. Everything you asked for, he said, sliding the folder across his desk. Account statements, withdrawal records, and the property assessments. Ryan reviewed the documents, noting that Allison had been systematically withdrawing cash for nearly a year. The pattern suggested planning, not impulse. She's been calculating this for a long time, Ryan observed. Drew nodded. There's more. Ben Wallace quit his job 3 weeks ago, and they've been looking at properties in California. Ryan raised an eyebrow. Investment properties? No. Residences. Expensive ones. Ryan tucked the folder into his bag. I need to access the safe deposit box. In the bank vault, Ryan opened the box he'd maintained for 5 years. Inside were several passports, cash in various currencies, memory cards, and a small recording device. He took everything except one passport and half the cash. The foundation is already laid, he told Drew as they walked out. Now I just need to set the first charge. His next stop was the office of Patricia Nordstrom, the best divorce attorney in Colorado. Ryan had first consulted her 6 months ago, when his suspicions had solidified into certainty. Patricia greeted him with professional efficiency. I was expecting your call, though not quite so soon. Circumstances accelerated the timeline. Ryan placed a USB drive on her desk. Everything is here. Financial records, evidence of infidelity, and documentation of assets acquired prior to the marriage. Patricia plugged in the drive. You've been thorough. I believe in preparation. She studied him. Most clients come to me emotional, unprepared. You're different. I've never believed in fighting battles without reconnaissance and strategy. Ryan leaned forward. I want this handled precisely according to the plan we discussed. No deviations. Understood. And the house. I'll handle that personally. After finalizing the legal strategy, Ryan drove to a modest hotel on the outskirts of town and checked in under a name that wouldn't raise flags in Allison's circle. He showered, changed the dressing on his wound, and opened his laptop. The security system he'd installed at the house, ostensibly for Allison's protection during his deployments, gave him complete access to cameras covering every approach to the property, as well as monitoring systems for the electrical and water utilities. He hadn't placed cameras inside. That would have been a step too far, but he didn't need them. Through the external cameras, Ryan watched as Allison and Ben returned to the house, groceries in hand, laughing. Ben carried the bags with a proprietary air, using Ryan's house key to unlock the front door. Ryan's expression remained impassive as he activated the second phase of his plan. With a few keystrokes, he initiated a series of financial transactions that would become visible in exactly 72 hours. Then he sent a text message to a number very few people had access to. The reply came almost immediately. "We owe you. Assets in position within 24 hours." Ryan closed the laptop. Tomorrow, he would confront Allison and Ben. But tonight, he would sleep, conserving energy for the campaign ahead. As he had learned through multiple combat deployments, timing was everything. And Allison had no idea that her understood response had been his signal to activate a plan long in the making. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd taken everything. But Allison didn't realize that Ryan had anticipated her betrayal and had been laying the groundwork for his response for months. By the time she understood what was happening, the war would already be lost. Chapter 4. First Contact. Ryan parked his rental car a block away from the house and approached on foot. It was just past 9 a.m., late enough that Ben would have left for whatever appointments a jobless pharmaceutical rep might have, but early enough that Allison would still be home. She never started her day at the real estate office before 10. He used his keys silently, entering the home he'd purchased 7 years ago. The interior had already changed. New artwork on the walls, different furniture in the living room. The framed photos of Ryan and Allison had been removed, replaced with abstract prints. Allison was in the kitchen, back turned, pouring coffee. The familiar scent of her perfume mixed with the aroma of French roast. "Hello, Allison." She whirled, coffee mug shattering on the tile floor. Her face, always beautiful, went pale. She was wearing silk pajamas Ryan had never seen before. "Ryan, you're not supposed to be back for weeks. Plans change." He remained in the doorway, studying her with detached interest, especially when one receives a divorce notification via email. Allison's shock gave way to defiance. "You were unreachable. What was I supposed to do? Perhaps not empty our joint account? Perhaps not move your lover into our home?" His tone remained conversational. "Just suggestions. It's my home, too." She stepped over the broken mug, moving to put the kitchen island between them. "And it was my money, too." Interesting perspective. Ryan placed his duffel on the counter. "I'll be collecting some of my belongings today. Ben will be back soon." Ryan smiled. "No, he won't. Ben is currently touring a property in Aspen with what he believes is a potential client. The showing will run long. Very long." Allison's eyes widened. "How did you?" "I know many things, Allison. For instance, I know that you and Ben have been planning this for at least 14 months. I know about the hotel in Denver last March, the weekend you said you were at a real estate conference. You had me followed?" Her outrage seemed genuine. "No, I simply paid attention." Ryan unzipped the duffel and removed a folder. "Did you really think I wouldn't notice the changes in your behavior? The new passwords on your phone? The unexplained expenses? That's paranoid and controlling. Is it paranoid if the threat is real?" Ryan slid the folder across the island. "These are copies of the financial records I've submitted to my attorney. You should recognize the transactions." Allison opened the folder, her expression shifting from defiance to concern as she flipped through the pages. Ryan had highlighted the systematic withdrawals she'd made, dating back more than a year. "This is my money, too," she repeated, but with less conviction. "Some of it, yes. But you took all of it, Allison. And that creates certain legal complications." Ryan retrieved another folder from his bag. "These are copies of the premarital assets documentation. The cabin is no longer relevant to our divorce proceedings." "What do you mean?" "I transferred ownership to Lauren 6 months ago. It was never marital property since it was inherited." Allison's face flushed. "You can't just." "I can and did. Legally." Ryan remained calm. "As for the house, you're correct that you have a claim to it. We'll let the courts decide the specifics." "I've already filed the divorce papers," Allison said, regaining some composure. "My lawyer says Colorado is an equitable distribution state. I get half of everything." "Half of the marital assets," Ryan corrected. "Not half of everything. But we can discuss that another time." I'm only here for some clothes and personal items. As Ryan moved toward the stairs, Allison followed. What happened to your shoulder? She asked, noticing his careful movements. Bullet wound. Yemen. Not that you asked when I was deployed. In the bedroom, more changes were evident. Ben's clothes hung in what had been Ryan's closet. The bedding had been replaced with an unfamiliar gray set. Ryan opened a specific drawer in the dresser. It was empty. Looking for something specific? Allison asked, watching from the doorway. Just confirming a theory. Ryan turned to the closet, retrieving a duffel bag from the back. It contained precisely what he expected. Nothing of value. His service medals, family heirlooms, and personal mementos were all missing. Where are my medals, Allison? She crossed her arms. In storage. This is my bedroom now, and I needed the space. Ryan nodded, as if this confirmed something important. One more question. The jewelry your mother left you, where is it? Allison's hand instinctively went to her neck, where she often wore her mother's pendant. In my safe. What? Just curious about what you consider important enough to protect. Ryan zipped up the empty duffel. I'll be back for the rest of my belongings once the court issues the preliminary orders. As he headed downstairs, Allison called after him. That's it? You're just leaving? Ryan paused at the front door. What did you expect, Allison? A scene? Begging? That's not who I am. You don't even seem angry. Anger is a waste of energy unless properly channeled. Ryan's gaze was disconcertingly calm. I responded to your email with understood because I do understand perfectly. You made your choice. Now we both live with the consequences. The statement hung in the air between them, its full meaning not yet clear to Allison. As Ryan walked to his car, he made a call. Phase 1 complete, he said when the line connected. Initiate Phase 2. Chapter 5. The Pieces Move. Over the next 72 hours, Ryan operated from a suite at the Brown Palace Hotel in downtown Denver. The historic hotel offered the privacy and security he required, along with proximity to the financial and legal resources he needed to access. From this command center, Ryan coordinated with a network he'd spent years developing. His military career had connected him with people who possessed very specific skill sets, people who owed him favors. Milo Pearson was one such individual. A former NSA analyst who now worked in private cybersecurity, Milo had been part of a hostage extraction in Syria 3 years ago. Ryan had led the team that brought him home. Everything is in place, Milo reported via secure video call. The digital breadcrumbs are laid. When anyone, like, say, a divorce attorney, starts digging into their finances, they'll find exactly what you specified. Timeline. The records are already in the system. They'll withstand moderate scrutiny, though the forensic accountant might eventually spot inconsistencies. Ryan nodded. By then, it won't matter. His next call was to Diane Baxter, a real estate attorney with whom he'd consulted 6 months earlier. The title company found the lien, Diane confirmed. It's now flagged in the system. They can't sell the house without clearing it. And the lien holder? Offshore corporation, as you specified. Very difficult to contact or negotiate with. The third call was to Tomas Ruiz, a former Marine who'd served with Ryan in his first deployment and now worked for a private security firm. We've had eyes on both targets for 48 hours, Tomas reported. Wallace meets regularly with a man named Vincent Lowry for meetings in 2 days. Lowry, Ryan made a note. Background, former hedge fund manager. Lost his license 3 years ago for securities fraud. Currently runs a financial consulting business. Ryan processed this information. Stay on them. I want to know everyone they meet with, especially if they visit any banks or financial institutions. While his network gathered intelligence, Ryan met with Patricia Nordstrom to advance the legal strategy. Allison's attorney has requested a full financial disclosure. Patricia informed him. They're particularly interested in your military benefits and any offshore accounts. Predictable. What's your assessment of her legal team? Gregory Winston. Aggressive, effective, but not particularly detail-oriented. He tends to go for broad strokes rather than precision. Ryan smiled slightly. That works in our favor. File the counter-disclosure as we discussed, with all the documentation I provided, including the transactions showing her systematic withdrawals, especially those. and make sure to include the mysteriously depleted joint account. On the third day, Ryan received a text from Drew. Just try to access one of your private accounts. System flagged unauthorized attempt. Ryan was not surprised. Allison had always been resourceful. He texted back, proceed with lockdown protocol. That evening, he drove to a nondescript office building in a commercial district. Hector Diaz, a compact man with prematurely gray hair, greeted him with a firm handshake. The equipment is ready, Hector said, leading Ryan to a room filled with surveillance monitors. Hector had been part of Ryan's team for 5 years before retiring to start a security consulting business. On the screens, Ryan could see various views of his house, along with a map showing GPS locations for 2 moving dots. This one is Allison's car, Hector explained, pointing to one dot. And this one is Wallace's. The tracking devices are military-grade, virtually undetectable. Audio. Hector handed Ryan tablet. Everything from the house security system is feeding to this. You can review all recordings remotely. Ryan studied the setup. Show me what they've been saying when they think they're alone. Hector pulled up a recording from the previous evening. Ben and Allison were in the kitchen, drinking wine. Once the divorce is final, we'll have enough to start fresh in California, Ben was saying. The market there is much better for the business we want to build. Ryan's being surprisingly cooperative, Allison replied. It's almost unsettling. I expected him to fight this. Maybe he just knows he can't win. Ben's voice was smug. And hey, by the time everything's settled, our other project with Vince should be paying dividends. Ryan had heard enough. What about the cabin surveillance? Hector switched to different feeds, showing the exterior of Ryan's mountain property. All set. Motion detection, night vision, cellular backup. If anyone approaches within 50 yards, you'll know about it. As Ryan left, Hector asked, do you need anything else? My team is standing by. Not yet. Ryan's expression was coldly determined. But soon, they're starting to make mistakes. On his way back to the hotel, Ryan received a call from Patricia. Allison's attorney is requesting an emergency hearing. They're claiming you've hidden assets and are asking for a temporary freeze on all accounts. Perfect, Ryan said. That's exactly where we want them. You want them to freeze your accounts? Patricia sounded skeptical. I want them focused on the wrong battlefield, Ryan replied. While they're looking at the financial front, they won't see what's coming from the other direction. Chapter 6, The Leverage. 1 week after Ryan's return to Colorado, the first major confrontation occurred in the judge's chambers at the county courthouse. Ryan, accompanied by Patricia, arrived 15 minutes early. Allison and her attorney, Gregory Winston, entered just before the scheduled time. Allison had chosen to present herself as the wronged wife, dressed conservatively in a navy suit with minimal jewelry. Her expression faltered briefly when she saw Ryan's calm demeanor. Judge Martha Sandoval was known for her no-nonsense approach to divorce proceedings. She reviewed the emergency petition with obvious impatience. Mr. Winston, your petition alleges that Colonel Stone has hidden marital assets. What evidence supports this claim? Winston, a florid man with an aggressive courtroom style, launched into his presentation. Your Honor, my client's husband emptied multiple accounts immediately before the divorce filing. We have evidence of transfers to offshore entities and, if I may, Your Honor, Patricia interrupted smoothly. Mr. Winston's claims are not only unsupported, but directly contradicted by the evidence. It was Mrs. Stone who emptied the joint account of $418,000, leaving exactly $5. We have the bank records here. She presented the documentation, which Judge Sandoval reviewed carefully. Furthermore, Patricia continued, Colonel Stone has provided full financial disclosure, including his military benefits and all accounts. It appears Mrs. Stone is projecting her own financial misconduct onto her husband. Winston blustered. Your Honor, we have reason to believe there are additional accounts. Based on what evidence? Judge Sandoval asked sharply. My client is aware of her husband's pattern of secretive behavior. That's not evidence, Mr. Winston. That's speculation. The judge turned to Ryan. Colonel Stone, do you wish to address these allegations? Ryan stood. Your Honor, I provided complete financial records. What's really at issue is that my wife and her companion have been planning this divorce for over a year, systematically withdrawing funds and making preparations while I was deployed overseas. I believe the emergency petition is a tactical move to distract from their own actions. Judge Sandoval studied him, then Allison, whose composure had noticeably slipped. I'm denying the emergency petition. There's insufficient evidence of hidden assets. However, I am ordering a freeze on all remaining joint accounts pending final property division. As they left the courtroom, Allison caught up to Ryan in the hallway. This isn't over. We know about your secret accounts. Ryan regarded her with that same unsettling calm. There's a difference between secrets and privacy, Allison. But you never did understand that distinction. What's that supposed to mean? It means that while you were searching for hidden money, you missed what was hidden in plain sight. Ryan glanced at Ben, who was waiting by the elevator. By the way, how well do you really know your new partner? Allison's eyes narrowed. Better than I ever knew you, apparently. We'll see. Ryan nodded to Patricia, and they walked away, leaving Allison looking uncertain for the first time. Back at the hotel, Ryan received a call from Tomas. We've confirmed Wallace's connection to Lowry. They're definitely planning something involving California real estate. Lowry has a history of running investment scams targeting wealthy divorcees. Interesting, Ryan said. And a funding source? That's where it gets complicated. It appears Wallace has been telling Lowry that he's coming into significant capital soon, around $400,000. The exact amount Allison had withdrawn from the joint account. Ryan's suspicions were confirmed. Keep monitoring. I want to know the moment they make any move toward California. That evening, Ryan met with Drew at a quiet bar downtown. Drew slid a USB drive across the table. Everything you asked for. Bank records showing Allison accessed her safe deposit box 3 times in the past week. And something else you should see. Ryan plugged the drive into his tablet. Among the files was a surveillance photo of Ben meeting with a woman who wasn't Allison, an attractive brunette who was clearly comfortable in his company. Who is she? Nicole Farber. Works at Mountain View Realty, same office as Allison. They're supposedly friends. Ryan studied the image. How friendly is she with Ben? Based on where his hand is in that photo, I'd say very. Drew sipped his beer. They've met 4 times in the past 10 days, always at the same hotel. Does Allison know? Not yet. Ryan's expression didn't change, but a cold satisfaction settled in his eyes. Perfect. This is exactly the leverage we need. For what? To drive the first wedge. Ryan tucked the tablet away. Ben Wallace is running a classic con. Seduce a woman with access to money, convince her to invest in a sure thing, then disappear with the cash. He's already setting up his escape hatch with this Nicole. Are you going to tell Allison? Not yet. First, I want them to feel secure, to believe they're winning. Ryan checked his watch. Now, I need you to do something else for me. Something that will seem completely unrelated. Ryan outlined his request, and Drew listened with growing amazement. That's devious. No, Ryan corrected. It's calculated. Every action has consequences. Allison and Ben are about to discover theirs. 2 days later, Ben Wallace received a letter from United Western Bank, informing him that his loan application for commercial property in California had been pre-approved based on his excellent credit rating and the substantial down payment he'd specified. All he needed to do was complete the final paperwork at their California branch and transfer the down payment. When Ben shared this news with Allison, their celebration was captured by the home security system Ryan still monitored. Their plan was moving forward exactly as they'd hoped, or so they thought. What they didn't know was that the pre-approval letter had been carefully crafted by Ryan's team, the bank letterhead perfect, the loan officer's signature flawless. It was the first domino in a sequence designed to collapse at precisely the right moment. Chapter 7. The Unraveling. 3 weeks after Ryan's return to Colorado, Allison and Ben flew to California to finalize what they believed was a legitimate real estate investment. They'd chosen a property in Newport Beach, a commercial building they planned to convert into office suites, with projected returns that seemed almost too good to be true. Because they were, in fact, too good to be true. The meeting at United Western Bank took place in a legitimate-looking office rented for the occasion and staffed by members of Hector's security team, posing as bank employees. Ben confidently presented the down payment, $380,000, in cashier's checks from the money Allison had withdrawn from the joint account. The loan officer, actually a former actress who owed Hector a favor, processed the paperwork with professional efficiency, providing Ben and Allison with what appeared to be valid documentation of their investment. They left believing they had secured their future. While they celebrated with champagne at an oceanfront restaurant, the real operation was unfolding. The cashier's checks were deposited into an escrow account controlled by Patricia's law firm, not stolen, but held as evidence of financial misconduct during divorce proceedings. Meanwhile, back in Colorado, Ryan executed the next phase of his plan. Using the access codes Allison had unwittingly provided through the home security system's keystroke monitoring, he gained entry to her real estate office after hours. He wasn't there to steal or vandalize, but to place something, a small listening device in her desk drawer, matched with a tiny camera concealed in a decorative item he knew she would move. When Allison returned from California, she would find several unpleasant surprises waiting. The first came when she tried to access her email at work and discovered her password had been changed. The IT department confirmed that the change request had come from her account, using her security questions. The second surprise arrived in the form of a formal letter from the Colorado Real Estate Commission, informing her that an ethics complaint had been filed against her. The complaint, anonymously submitted with detailed documentation, alleged that she had improperly used client information for personal gain. The third and most devastating surprise occurred when she returned home to find divorce papers taped to the front door. Not the original filing, but an amended petition from Ryan's attorney that included shocking new allegations: conspiracy to commit fraud, misappropriation of marital assets, and evidence of an attempt to illegally transfer those assets across state lines. Attached to the petition were copies of the very documents she and Ben had signed in California, along with surveillance photos of them at the fake bank. Allison frantically called Ben, who had remained in California for what he claimed was a meeting with potential clients. "Ben, we're in serious trouble," she said, her voice shaking. "Ryan knows everything about California. He has copies of the paperwork, photos of us at the bank, everything." "That's impossible," Ben insisted. "Nobody knew about this except us and Vince." "Well, someone knew, and now I'm being accused of fraud." "Just calm down," Ben said. "We haven't done anything illegal. We were investing our own money." "No, Ben. It was marital assets. Money from my joint account with Ryan. Money that legally should have been frozen until the divorce was finalized." Allison's panic was growing. "This could cost me my real estate license. I could face criminal charges. Look, I need to sort some things out here. I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll figure this out." But Ben didn't return the next day, or the day after. His phone went straight to voicemail. His clothes remained in the closet, but his passport was gone from the drawer where Allison had seen it. What Allison didn't know was that Ben had received his own surprise in California. Photographs of himself with Nicole Farber, along with a USB drive containing recordings of him discussing his real plans. In one particularly damning recording, Ben told Vincent Lowry that he intended to cash out once the money is secured and disappear to Mexico without Allison. Ben didn't realize that Vince had been working for Ryan for weeks, ever since Ryan's team had discovered the connection and approached Lowry with a simple choice: cooperation or exposure of his previous frauds to his probation officer. Abandoned and desperate, Allison tried to access the money she'd transferred to California, only to discover that the account number she'd been given led nowhere. The bank itself was legitimate, but the specific branch they'd visited didn't exist. It was at this lowest point that Allison received a text from Ryan: "My attorney's office. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Chapter 8. The Revelation. The law offices of Nordstrom and Associates occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown building. Allison arrived 10 minutes early, her usual confidence shattered. The receptionist directed her to a conference room where Ryan waited alone, reviewing documents. He looked up as she entered. "Thank you for coming." Allison remained standing. "Did I have a choice? You've destroyed my life." "No, Allison, you destroyed your own life. I simply ensured you experienced the consequences." This is revenge. This is justice. Ryan gestured to the chair across from him. Please sit. What I'm about to show you will take some time to process. Reluctantly, Allison sat. Ryan opened a laptop and turned it to face her. On the screen was a video of Ben and Nicole Farber in an intimate embrace. That's from 2 months ago, Ryan said calmly. While I was deployed, Ben was playing both of you. Allison's face paled. Why are you showing me this? Because you deserve to know who you betrayed me for. Ryan clicked to another file, an audio recording of Ben talking to Vincent Lowry. Once we secure the investment capital from Allison, I'll need about 2 weeks to transfer everything to the Cayman account, Ben's voice said clearly. She believes we're building a life together, but that's your specialty, isn't it, Vince? Selling beautiful lies. Allison's hands trembled. He was going to steal my money. Your money? You mean the marital assets you illegally withdrew? Ryan's voice remained even. Yes, that was always his plan. Ben Wallace has done this before. 3 times, in fact. Different states, different names sometimes, but the same scheme. He slid a folder across the table. Inside were background reports on Ben, including previous aliases and police reports from women who'd filed complaints but never pressed charges. How did you know? Allison whispered. I didn't initially, but once I suspected your infidelity, I started paying attention. The patterns were there, the unexplained expenses, the changes in your behavior, the new passwords. I began documenting everything 6 months ago. So all of this, the fake bank, the California property, it was all a trap? Ryan nodded. One you walked into willingly, just as you walked into Ben's trap. The difference is, I wasn't trying to steal from you. I was building a case. A case for what? Originally, just for the divorce. I wanted to ensure you couldn't take everything we'd built together. Ryan's eyes hardened. But then you emptied our joint account while I was on a mission. You moved your lover into our home. You crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. Allison's defiance resurfaced. So you decided to ruin me? Is that it? No. I decided to let you ruin yourself. Ryan opened another file on the laptop, the ethics complaint filed with the Real Estate Commission. This wasn't my doing. This came from Nicole Farber. Apparently, she discovered that Ben was involved with you at the same time, and she didn't take it well. Nicole filed the ethics complaint? But she's my friend. Evidently not. Ryan closed the laptop. Here's where we stand, Allison. The money you withdrew is being held in escrow. Ben has disappeared, probably to Mexico. Your professional reputation is in jeopardy. And the divorce proceedings have barely begun. Tears welled in Allison's eyes. What do you want from me? A clean break. No more games, no more lies. Ryan pushed a new set of documents across the table. These are revised divorce terms. You keep your separate property, your car, your personal belongings, your jewelry. I keep mine, including the cabin. We sell the house and split the proceeds. The money you withdrew is returned to marital assets and divided accordingly. Allison scanned the documents. And the ethics complaint? That's between you and the commission. I have no control over Nicole's actions. But you could tell them. Tell them what? That you didn't knowingly participate in Ben's scheme? That would require lying under oath, and I won't do that. Allison's shoulders sagged. I never meant for things to go this far. Intentions matter less than actions, Allison. You made choices. Those choices had consequences. Ryan stood. Patricia will be here in 20 minutes to witness if you decide to sign. I'll leave you to review the documents. As he reached the door, Allison asked, Did you ever love me? Ryan? Really love me? Ryan paused, his back to her. Yes, completely. That's why your betrayal warranted such a comprehensive response. He left her alone with the documents and her regrets. Chapter 9. Ashes and Steel. 6 months after the confrontation in Patricia's office, Ryan stood on the deck of his cabin, watching a summer storm approach across the mountains. The divorce had been finalized 3 months earlier, with Allison accepting the terms he'd offered, not out of generosity, but because she'd recognized she had no better options. The house had sold quickly once the manufactured lien was removed, providing both of them with a reasonable settlement. Ryan had used his portion to expand the cabin, adding a workshop where he now spent hours crafting furniture from reclaimed wood, a skill his grandfather had taught him years ago. His phone rang. Lauren calling for their weekly check-in. "I just heard some interesting news," she said after they'd exchanged greetings. Allison lost her real estate license. "The commission's ruling came down yesterday." "I'm aware," Ryan replied, watching lightning flicker in the distance. "Did you have anything to do with that?" "No. That was the natural consequence of her actions with Ben." Ryan had maintained his distance from the proceedings, neither helping nor hindering Allison's defense. Speaking of Ben, there's more news. Mexican authorities found a body matching his description in Puerto Vallarta. Apparent robbery gone wrong. Ryan said nothing, his expression unchanged as thunder rolled across the mountains. "Ryan." Lauren's voice held a question she wasn't quite asking. "Tragic," he said finally, though not unexpected. Ben made many enemies. The conversation shifted to other topics: Lauren's law practice, their plans for the holidays, a potential business opportunity Ryan was considering involving his furniture crafting. After ending the call, Ryan checked his secure email. There was a message from Tomas. "Package delivered as requested. No complications." Ryan deleted the message, then accessed a numbered account at a bank in the Cayman Islands. The balance showed a withdrawal of exactly $50,000 2 days earlier. The agreed-upon payment for ensuring Ben Wallace would never victimize another woman. Some might call it murder. Ryan considered it preventive action, no different from neutralizing a threat on the battlefield. Inside the cabin, Ryan opened a hidden safe behind a bookshelf. Among the contents was a small journal in which he documented every detail of Allison's betrayal and his response. On the final page, he made a new entry: "Justice served." Chapter closed. Later that evening, as rain lashed against the windows, Ryan received an unexpected text from a number he didn't recognize. "It's Allison. Can we talk? I need closure." Ryan studied the message, considering his response. In the months since the divorce, he'd rebuilt his life with the same methodical precision he'd used to dismantle hers. He'd started a small furniture business, reconnected with military colleagues, even had dinner occasionally with a bookstore owner named Serena who asked intelligent questions and seemed genuinely interested in his woodworking. Allison was part of a closed chapter, a painful lesson in betrayal and consequence. He typed his response carefully. "There's nothing